Welcome to Wi-Fi Concepts and Reconnaissance, Section 2. In this section, we're going to talk about the fundamentals of wireless networks. We're going to talk about how you can conceal and change your MAC address to hide better once you get on those networks. We're going to talk about how to find wireless networks that are around you in plain sight and how to use promiscuous mode to eavesdrop on those networks. We're then going to talk about how you can find networks that are trying to hide from you, and then how we can conduct information gathering on any type of wireless network that we encounter. So let's get started. Wireless networks. In this video, we're going to look at the types of wireless networks. We're going to talk about frequencies that are used in those wireless networks and the types of security used in those wireless networks. When it comes to wireless networks, there are multiple types out there, and you have to know what type you're looking at before you can attack it and penetrate it. There are 5 main types of networks you may come across in the field: 802.11a, 802.11b, 802.11g, 802.11n, and 802.11ac. Let's take a look at all of these networks and how they evolved over the years. 802.11a was first founded back in 1999. And it was the first commercial implementation of wireless networking pro-user and the consumer out in the marketplace. The problem though was it was very costly to operate. As you can see, it operated in the 5 gigahertz spectrum. Now that means what radio frequency the radio in the wireless card was using. It was using the 5 gigahertz spectrum, and those radios were not cheap. The good thing about this spectrum is because it was a larger number in this 5 gigahertz spectrum, it had more ability to hold more bandwidth, and so it can operate up to 54 megabits per second, which was a very respectable speed. Now in 1999 though, because of this expensive implementation, there was a cheaper version that came out that operated in the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, and that's called 802.11b, and this is the first widely accepted one in the consumer marketplace. 802.11b was much cheaper to produce because those radios used a more common radio called a 2.4 gigahertz spectrum. And that spectrum is used in things like baby monitors and walkie-talkies already, so it's very inexpensive to produce. But because of the lower gigahertz, the lower frequency being used, there was less bandwidth, and it was only 11 megabits per second, which was very, very slow even in those days. But again, the freedom of wireless was a wonderful thing, and people started adopting it. But it wasn't really until 2003 when 802.11g came out, which allowed additional bandwidth based on the way that the frequency was being utilized, that led to a widespread adoption with much better bandwidth at a lower cost. If you'll notice, it went back up to 54 megabits per second. So we're able to use those cheaper radios, that 2.4 gigahertz radio, but still maintain that 54 megabits per second bandwidth. And because of this, widespread adoption came in Wi-Fi, and you started finding Wi-Fi everywhere you went. The next evolution was in 2009, when 802.11n came out. And this was a dual-band wireless network that allowed for cable network equivalent speeds, just like using a Cat5 cable, an RJ45 cable. It can use 100 megabits per second, and it can actually operate between 108 and 600 megabits per second. Now, the thing about this was it was dual band. It could operate at either 2.4 for backwards compatibility with G and B networks, or operate in 5 gigahertz so that it can get additional speeds of that higher frequency and maintain backwards compatibility with A. So A and N could operate in 5 gigahertz, B, G, and N can operate at 2.4. Well, when you move into the latest version of wireless networks, you're dealing with 802.11ac, and that came out in 2012 and beyond. This only supports 5 gigahertz, but because of that, it has increased speeds. It can operate at 1000 megabits per second or 1 gigabit per second. And again, this operates in the 5 gigahertz frequency. Now, why does this all matter to you? Well, because you have to know what frequency you're operating in to be able to attack that wireless network. The card I'm going to use, and I'm going to do all of the demonstrations in this class, is an Alpha Networks 36NH. That is a 2.4 gigahertz card. So we can only attack wireless B, G, and N networks. We can't go after A or AC because those operate solely in the 5 gigahertz realm. Now, is that a big deal? Well, not really, because what you'll find is that most networks out there provide backwards compatibility. So most of the Wi-Fi access points will have both a 2.4 and a 5 gigahertz radio. And so we can attack it on the 2.4 and still gain access to the network. Now, the next thing we're going to have to come across is wireless security, and there are 5 types of wireless security. The first one is called open, and open means just that. There is no security. There's no password, no encryption. The next one is WEP. That stands for Wired Equivalent Privacy. After that, we had WPA, which is Wi-Fi Protected Access. Then we moved into WPA2, which is Wi-Fi Protected Access version 2. And finally, it's not really security as much as it's a configuration tactic, but it's called WPS, or Wi-Fi Protected Setup. Now, we are going to go through each of these 4 types of wireless security / configurations in future lectures as we go into each section of this course and attack them individually using Kali Linux, using NetHunter, and using other tools.